My name is Clara Mitchell, and at 63, I thought I had already endured the worst life could throw at me. I buried my husband after a long illness, worked until my knees gave out in a noisy second-grade classroom, and poured what I had left into helping my only son stand on his own feet. I thought I understood sacrifice. I thought I knew what family meant. But nothing in my long life prepared me for the sentence I overheard on a bitter December evening. I had just finished wrapping toys for my grandson when I paused at the kitchen doorway of Adam's house. The smell of cinnamon rolls drifted through the air, warm and sweet. But what came out of my son's mouth froze me in place. He leaned against the counter, his voice lowered yet sharp as glass. "The best gift for Christmas," he told his wife, "would be if Mom just died." For a moment I wondered if my ears had betrayed me. My hands trembled so badly the tape dispenser slipped and clattered to the floor. I waited for Rebecca to laugh it off, to scold him for saying something cruel. Instead, she gave a small, nervous chuckle and said, "Don't joke like that, Adam. She pays half the bills." He shrugged and muttered, "Exactly. Once she's gone, everything's ours." The cinnamon sweetness turned bitter in my throat. I pressed myself against the wall so they wouldn't notice me, my heart pounding like I'd run a mile. My son, the boy I once held through fevers, the man whose mortgage I quietly saved from foreclosure, was speaking about me as if I were nothing more than a line item on a spreadsheet, an obstacle in his way. I wanted to storm in and demand an explanation, but the words tangled inside my chest. All I could do was stare at the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights and wonder if they would blur through my tears. A mother should never hear such a wish from her own child. That night, with wrapping paper still scattered on the table and my heart breaking in pieces, I realized my life had changed forever. And though I didn't know it yet, their careless cruelty had awakened a resolve in me that would soon tear down the world they thought they owned. The morning after that conversation, I sat at the small kitchen table in the guest room I had been renting from Adam. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, untouched, while the words from the night before replayed again and again in my head. Every time I blinked, I could see my son's face as he said it. The best gift for Christmas would be if I just died. I tried to reason with myself, tried to believe it had been stress talking, or maybe too much bourbon. But the truth gnawed at me. His tone hadn't been drunk or careless. It had been deliberate. He meant it. That realization settled over me like a heavy coat I couldn't take off. When Adam came downstairs later, he acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed Rebecca on the cheek, asked about the grocery list, joked with his son about Santa's reindeer. I watched him with a hollow chest, waiting for him to glance at me, waiting for some flicker of guilt to cross his face. It never did. He carried on like I was invisible. I thought about all the years I had shouldered for him, the down payment I scraped together after my husband passed so Adam wouldn't lose the house, the months I secretly covered utilities when he fell behind, the retirement fund I dipped into, convincing myself it was just a loan to help him through, and yet, in his eyes, my death would be the real gift. That afternoon, as Rebecca was folding laundry, I heard her sigh to a friend over the phone. If Clara weren't here, we could refinance without her name on the deed. The bank wouldn't hesitate then. My stomach turned. It wasn't just Adam's bitterness. It was their plan. I slipped into my room and closed the door, my hands shaking as I pulled out the worn leather folder where I kept every receipt, every bank statement, every letter from the mortgage company. For years, I had thought of it as insurance against the unexpected. Now it felt like a lifeline. As I laid the papers across the bedspread, one thing became painfully clear. I needed to know exactly how deep they had buried me in their debt. The stack of papers on my bed looked like a low, white mountain. I took a breath, smoothed the top sheet, and began sorting. Mortgage statements, utility bills, bank notices, things I had filed away carefully, believing organization could hold a family together. It turns out, paperwork can't fix a broken heart, but it can tell the truth. I opened my laptop and logged into online banking. The screen loaded with a spinning wheel that felt like judgment. When the numbers finally appeared, a red banner slid across the top. Account overdraft 146.37. My throat tightened. I clicked into the transactions. There they were, little exits I hadn't authorized, several transfers to Adam's checking account labeled household, a debit at a boutique I'd never heard of, a payment to a subscription service that sounded like yet another streaming channel. None of it belonged to me. I scrolled back 2 months, then 3. The withdrawals weren't random. They lined up with the days Adam had promised to handle the bills. Each time, money moved out of my emergency fund and into his life with the quiet efficiency of a siphon. I felt heat rise to my face. My emergency fund had a purpose, to keep me alive if the roof fell in or the car gave up. Apparently, it had a second purpose in this house, to keep appearances polished. The doorbell rang, and I startled so hard my knee hit the desk. I peeked through the window and saw a delivery driver leaving an envelope on the porch. Rebecca called out, "Babe, I think it's the utility notice." She tore it open in the hallway. "Final reminder," she read, her voice dropping. "Payment must be received to avoid interruption." I heard Adam mumble something about holiday delays and "I'll take care of it." The same vague promises that had buried me inch by inch. I returned to my laptop and opened the mortgage portal. A warning in bold letters sat at the top of the page like a verdict. Past due, contact lender. I gripped the desk until my fingers ached. I had believed we were partners, a family pulling together. But the screen, cold, factual, told me we were not partners at all. I was a line of credit. I closed the laptop, slid the leather folder into my tote, and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. I needed answers from someone who didn't owe Adam loyalty and didn't owe me pity. Tomorrow, I would start with the law. The next morning, I walked into the downtown office of Sandra Lopez, a real estate attorney whose name I had found through a retired teacher friend. The December wind still clung to my coat, but inside her office smelled faintly of lemon polish and paper ink, sharp and clean. I clutched my leather folder to my chest as if it were a shield. Sandra looked younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with hair clipped neatly behind her ears and glasses that gave her an air of precision. She motioned me to sit, then folded her hands across the desk. "What brings you in today?" "Mrs. Mitchell." My voice quivered as I explained, not about the cruel words I'd overheard, that was too raw, but about the withdrawals, the overdue notices, the way my name still sat on the deed. When I finally pushed the folder toward her, I felt both relief and shame. Relief that someone would see it, shame that I had let things go this far. She sifted through the documents with a calm efficiency, occasionally underlining a number with her pen. After several minutes, she looked up. "Clara, you still own 40% of this property. Your son and his wife can't refinance without your consent. If they've been using your funds without authorization, you have every right to pull back." The words settled over me like a blanket I hadn't realized I needed. For months, I'd felt like a ghost in my own life, invisible and powerless. Now, for the first time, someone reminded me I had rights. Real, legal rights. Sandra leaned forward. "There is an option called a partition sale. It means if you no longer wish to co-own the property, you can force a sale through the court. The proceeds would be divided according to ownership share minus the mortgage and debts. It isn't a step taken lightly, but it is yours to choose." I sat in silence, letting the phrase roll through my mind, force a sale. It felt both terrifying and liberating. Adam had treated me like a burden to erase. But here was proof, black and white, that I wasn't powerless. When I left Sandra's office, the wind cut across my face again, but I walked straighter. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, only that I finally had one. That evening I sat alone at the dining table, the leather folder open once more beneath the yellow glow of a lamp. Sandra's words echoed in my mind. "You can force a sale." It sounded drastic, almost violent, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like survival. I pulled a sheet of heavy paper from my printer and began drafting a letter. My hands shook at first, but with each line, my grip steadied. Notice of intent to sell. I wrote across the top in firm strokes. I spelled out my name, my share of ownership, and the fact that I was no longer willing to be drained in silence. By the time I signed my name at the bottom, my chest felt lighter, as though I had finally remembered who I was. I slipped the letter into a red envelope. It almost looked festive, the kind you'd expect to hold a holiday card. I placed it beside my purse, ready for Sandra to send through official channels in the morning. Then I turned to the bills. For years, I had quietly covered the electric and water accounts whenever Adam fell behind. It had become a ritual. I would sneak online, make a payment, and tell myself I was protecting my grandson from cold nights and empty sinks. But tonight, I closed the laptop without logging in. The choice carved through me like a blade. If I didn't pay, the notices would stack up. The lights might go out. And part of me hated myself for even imagining my grandson shivering in the dark. Yet another part whispered that this was the only way for Adam and Rebecca to finally face reality. They had treated me as a safety net they could burn through without consequence. Without my quiet rescues, they would discover just how fragile their house of cards really was. I sat back in the chair and let the silence fill the room. Somewhere upstairs, I could hear Adam's laughter through the floorboards, a sound that once brought me joy, but now scraped like sandpaper. I pressed my palms flat against the table for the first time in years. I wasn't going to save them. And though I trembled at the thought, I knew exactly when they would feel the difference. Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve arrived draped in glittering lights across the neighborhood. From the front porch, I could see houses glowing with strings of red and green, children darting through the yards in puffy coats, and the faint music of carols carried on the wind. Inside Adam's house, the tree sparkled with ornaments I had bought years earlier, but I felt no warmth from it. By late afternoon, guests began arriving, friends of Adam and Rebecca who came bearing bottles of wine and wrapped boxes. The kitchen buzzed with chatter, laughter rose above the clatter of dishes, and still a shadow hung over me. I stayed near the hallway, unnoticed, like a stranger in the home I had helped secure. At 6:30, just as Rebecca pulled a ham from the oven, the house went silent. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The music cut off mid-verse. Then the lights blinked once, twice, and died. Darkness swallowed the room. There was a pause, confusion, murmurs, then the high-pitched wail of my grandson as he clutched his toy car. "It's okay, buddy," Adam said too quickly, fumbling with his phone flashlight, but the panic in his voice betrayed him. Rebecca struck a match, lit a candle, and hissed, "Adam, you said you paid this bill." I thought I did," he snapped, his face pale in the glow. Maybe the payment didn't go through. Guests exchanged awkward glances. One woman pulled her coat tighter. Another whispered something about calling it a night. The air grew colder by the minute, the furnace already shutting down with the power. I stood in the shadows by the staircase, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at me to step forward, to soothe my grandson, to fix the mess. But I stayed rooted. This was the consequence of years of silence, and it was not mine to repair anymore. I slipped away before anyone noticed, my packed suitcase waiting by the door. Outside, a cab idled at the curb, its headlights cutting through the winter dark. The driver loaded my bag without a word. As we pulled away, I glanced back once at the dim house where laughter had turned to shouting. My red envelope was already with Sandra, my path was already set, and by morning, I would be flying to Paris. Paris in winter smelled of roasted chestnuts and cold river air. As the taxi carried me through glowing streets, I pressed my forehead to the glass, stunned that I had actually left. For once, I wasn't Adam's mother or Rebecca's safety net. I was simply Clara. Lucille greeted me outside her apartment near the Seine, wrapping me in a scarf-scented hug. "You look like you've been carrying a mountain," she said. "Leave it here. Paris can hold it." That evening, over wine at her kitchen table, my phone lit up again and again. Adam's number flashed, then Rebecca's. Then a dozen texts stacked one after another. "Where are you? Mom, you can't just vanish. Please call me." I turned the phone face down. Lucille's hand rested on mine. "You don't owe them tonight." Still, curiosity got the better of me. An email from Sandra appeared. "Your son and his wife want to negotiate. They're asking you to withdraw the notice." My chest tightened. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted leverage. I shut the phone off and looked out the window. Paris shimmered, stitched together with light. A city that didn't demand anything of me. For the first time in years, silence belonged to me. And in that silence, I began to feel whole. The next morning, croissant crumbs scattered across my plate as I opened Rebecca's email. Her words spilled in frantic lines. "If the house goes into foreclosure, everyone will know. Our credit will be ruined. People will talk. Please don't do this. Think of your grandson." Not once did she apologize. Not once did she mention Adam's cruelty. Only fear of shame. Another email followed, forwarded from Sandra. "Buyers have already signed escrow. Unless all parties cancel, which I advise against, you may proceed. Closing is scheduled for early January." Relief and anger twisted together. Escrow meant protection, an end I could hold in my hands. I imagined Adam pacing, Rebecca wringing her hands, their holiday guests whispering about the blackout. Their facade had cracked, and they were scrambling to paste it back together. I set the phone aside and turned to the window. The Seine drifted slowly, carrying light across its surface. For years, I had carried Adam the same way, through bills, through every storm. Carrying him had nearly drowned me. Now the river flowed on, indifferent, steady. I decided I would too. I typed 3 words to Sandra, "Proceed as planned." As the message sent, calm spread through me. No more rescues, no more excuses. There was finally an end in sight, and it belonged to me. The first week of January, I returned from Paris and met Sandra at the title company. Adam and Rebecca were already waiting, pale and restless. Adam jumped up when he saw me. "Mom, please," he begged. "Don't do this. Just give us more time." Rebecca clutched her folder as if it might protect her. "We'll set up payments. We'll fix it. Just don't take the house." For a heartbeat, I almost faltered. They sounded desperate, like frightened children. But then I remembered Christmas Eve, the darkness, the words I had overheard. Their desperation now was not repentance, it was fear of consequence. We sat at the long table while the escrow officer slid documents toward us. My pen hovered only a second before I signed. Adam's voice cracked. "You're ruining us. Don't you care about your grandson?" I met his eyes. "I'm not ruining you. I gave you everything, and still you wished me gone. This is the result of your choices, not mine." Silence filled the room, broken only by the scratch of pens. When the final page was signed, the weight I had carried for years seemed to lift. Outside, the January air stung my cheeks. Sandra touched my arm and said quietly, "You did the right thing." And for the first time in a long while, I truly believed it. 2 weeks later, the sale closed. The wire hit my account, smaller than the years I'd invested, but clean. For the first time, money in my name belonged solely to me. Adam and Rebecca packed their lives into a rented truck. I didn't watch them leave. Sandra had advised me not to, and she was right. Later, I heard they'd moved into a cramped apartment across town, stripped of the manicured lawns and glowing decorations they once clung to. I found my own place, a one-bedroom with a narrow balcony shaded by sycamores. The air smelled of new paint and carpet glue, ordinary but mine. At night, I marveled at the silence. No arguments, no heavy footsteps, no tension humming through the walls, only the steady hum of my refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. Unpacking. I came across a photo of Adam at 7, frosting smeared on his cheeks, grinning like the world was wide open. My chest tightened. I hadn't stopped loving him, not even after everything. But I finally understood that love without limits had nearly erased me. I set the frame on a shelf, poured a cup of tea, and stepped onto the balcony. The winter air cut sharp against my skin, but it carried a clarity I had long forgotten. The chapter with Adam was closed. What remained was simple but steady. My space, my voice, my peace. Sometimes, as dusk settled, I thought back to that December night when I stood frozen in a doorway, hearing my son wish me gone. Those words nearly destroyed me, but they also became the spark that saved me. I learned strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a steady hand signing papers, or the quiet resolve to stop paying bills that aren't yours. Sometimes it's a one-way ticket tucked in a purse. Sometimes it's the silence of ignoring calls that once ruled your life. My neighbors now know me only as Clara, the retired teacher who keeps too many scarves and sips tea on her balcony. They don't see the scars I carry, and I don't need them to. Those marks remind me I drew a line and honored it. Do I miss my grandson? Deeply. My love for him hasn't faltered. If Adam chooses one day to let him know me, it will be on terms built with honesty, not exploitation. Until then, I wait, open-hearted, but no longer open-handed. That Christmas, Adam wished for my death. Instead, the illusion of endless support died, and in its place, I found freedom. As twilight fades each evening, I whisper a truth I wish I'd learned earlier. Some love looks like sacrifice, but real love also knows when to say no. And in that quiet strength, I am finally whole. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.